Hey YouTube, Fifi fan here with another video. This is piggybacking on my deck profile that I made for Magnolia. This is just like tips and tricks. Starting, my first point would probably be starting hands and mulligans. Here I have from the most important to like the least important. Obviously, the persona right is the most important thing. You if you have that in your hand, always keep it. If you have more than one, if you can keep more than one, it's good. But if not, put one back. The next thing that's most important, I would say, is Ursula. I was really debate between these two, but I kind of feel like being able to, if this is if you have a really good board and you don't know what the future holds. So being able to move around the stuff that you do have and make use of what you have currently is probably the best bet. So I would say holding Ursula in hand if you do get her in your opening hand. Next would be Dominamaru, really important card. If you ever get this in your opening hand, and you have like a Ursula in hand, you always want to keep this too. Um, just this just makes this so much better. Um, Regardless in your open hand, if you see these two, always keep these two. Everything else here, I'm going to talk about them, but everything else here, you mulligan until you get your persona right. If you don't already have it, if you already have persona right, then you can worry about this stuff. But if you see these two in your opening hand, always keep these two. If you have persona right, then keeping these is fine. But if you do not have persona right, mulligan whatever else that you have. These two are the most important. So say you have this, and this in your hand. Next up would be something to go off of Dominamaru, which is Guinosla. I feel like Kusi is really good first turn. So if you don't have access to Guinosla, Kusi is definitely the next most important thing that you can do. Putting this behind your Vanguard early on almost certainly guarantees no guarding, which is perfect for your crits. Next is Duger. Duger is good your first grade 3 turn if your ride line has produced you units. Otherwise, it doesn't really do anything. It's just a 10k attacker. Um, this is just a finisher. I only really use this to finish stuff. I guess you can use it in your first grade 3 turn. If you really want to push, and you can push, you can use a soul, but I don't, recommend that because having soul for Dominamaru is really important. Like this is like the last case scenario if you can't get any of this other stuff. And then Aglio being like the least important. Really doesn't really do. I mean, you can use that any stage, after turn two. But it's really good for late game, especially persona riding when you're really trying to push for damage. So I would say this will probably be like the least most important. Okay, so we're good with that. Okay, next up I have is critical etiquette. Now, critting with your Vanguard during the grade 3 turn and persona turns is really dangerous. I only really recommend you using a crit on your like third and fourth turn, or putting it on a Vanguard is if your opponent is at really low damage. If you're on your persona right turn, I really don't recommend putting on that because it's nothing worse than you being on persona right turn with all of your columns and they hit two defensive back to back. It's nothing worse. So I'm saying the only really good time to put this on the Vanguard, minus like early game, is if your opponent, is if you're trying to kill your opponent and they have very low damage. That's the only time I recommend putting it on the Vanguard. Other than that, you always want to put your critical on your last attacking unit. You always want to put your critical on your last attacking unit. So after you attack your opponent, you put your opponent to 5. they have to guard without a card in your hand, and your last attack will probably be the attack that'll finish it. Next is heel trigger etiquette. Now you think that this is just like the critical etiquette and the heel trigger etiquette, like this is just like just novice stuff, but it's really good fundamentally. Say you are attacking your opponent, and your opponent, if you're attacking your opponent and your opponent gets a heal trigger, that'll heal them a damage. You only want to start attacking with the Vanguard when you know that your opponent is out of heal trigger range. You know what I mean? So say if you're at 3, you don't want to push with your rear guards to put them to 3, because once you make your drive check, they can get a heal trigger and just heal off that damage. So be very careful when you're making your attacks. Make sure you know your opponent's damage, so you can mitigate any heal triggers that they might have. If you have any questions about what I just said, because I know that was pretty confusing, but you can make it down at the comment section below, and I'll get back to you about it. Fourth is taking damage. So taking damage early really depends on this card here, whether or not you've drawn this card. If you have not drawn this card, if you do not have this in your opening hand, and you have not drawn this card before grade 3 or grade 2, you always take the damage. You always want to have at least 2 damage if you don't have Dominamaru, just so you can use Magnolia skill. So you'll have at least 1, 2, 3 attacks. So taking damage, and just, before grade 3, if you have this in hand, sitting at 1 damage is okay, because this already gives you an extra attack. If you don't have this in hand, then take the 2 damage or get 2 damage for your Magnolia turn, your first grade 3 Magnolia turn. And then last but not least, just some slight info for Guinosla. If you have this in your hand, your first, on your grade 2 turn, you may not want to attack with it, but it's best practice to put it in your back row. And you do that because from your ride line, your grade 2 and your ride line, if you call a Dominamaru for whatever reason, you can automatically use his skill on Guinosla, and so you'll have him online for your grade 3, for your first grade 3 turn. So if you have this in your hand, either you had this after your mulligan, or you drew into this for your second turn. If you don't want to attack with it, if you don't have the resources to attack with it, at least put it in the back row, just in case you do get this on from your Lattice skill. So that's all I have just for the tips and tricks for this. If you have any, leave some in the comment section. If you can think of anything else, leave in the comment section. If you have any critiques about what the stuff that I just made, or have any questions, please leave that in the comment section as well. Thanks for watching the video.